I don't think everyone should be, aiming for becoming an account executive or an account manager. I don't think that it's necessary to push people to do that. Multitasking is a productivity killer. And we don't really realize that because there's so many different tools and tactics and different things that we could be doing.
Hello, Sales Nation. I'm Will Barron, host of the Salesman Podcast, the world's biggest B2B sales show where we help you not just hit your sales target, but really thrive in sales. Click subscribe if you haven't already, and let's meet today's guest.
Hi, I'm David Dulany, founder of Tenbound, and we help sales development teams to improve their performance. And I just consider myself a cheerleader for the sales development practice.
On this episode of the show, we're diving into the precise steps that you need to take to move from SDR, sales development rep, into that glorified, that holy, that's amazing account management or account executive position where very literally, as David explains in this show, your pay might double. So with that, let's jump right in. We're going to dive into the topic which I get asked frequently, and I'm sure you do as well in your position, sir, of how do we get from an SDR role to an AE role? And where I want to start with all this, the start of this conversation is, should all SDRs, sales development reps, should they be aiming and eyeing up and moving towards and fighting and trying their chances and going after account executive positions? Or are some SDRs better suited for an SDR role?
Yeah, so short answer is no, not at all. I mean, there's as many roles available in most growing companies as there's types of people that are involved. So I don't think everyone should be, aiming for becoming an account executive or an account manager. I don't think that it's necessary to push people to do that. I think people should go with whatever strengths that they have, identify those, and go where they can add the most value to the company. And if you're excellent at setting appointments and prospecting, and that's something that you enjoy doing, and that's what you want to do, there's absolutely nothing wrong with staying in the position and adding value to the company in that way. If what really turns you on is closing deals and working with customers and taking them through the process, then definitely look at account executive. If you're more into working with the current customers and making sure that they're happy and introducing them to new products and services, you may want to look at customer success. There's all sorts of different opportunities available, especially right now. There's a lot of momentum. We're in a good economic period, at least here in the States, and it's kind of the sky's the limit. So I definitely wouldn't be pigeonholed and trying to just focus on one end game there.
And can we go from being a average SDR to being a fantastic customer service or fantastic customer success or fantastic account manager? Is that a leap that we can make? Because clearly they're using different skill sets.
Yeah, that's very tricky because you were hired to set qualified appointments and drive qualified pipeline that leads to revenue. And so the business, from a business perspective, they're looking for that. That's the end goal that they're looking for from bringing you on, spending the money to give you the equipment and the desk and the training. The business is looking for an ROI from the investment that they're making in someone as a sales development rep. And so if you're kind of average in that, it's hard to look toward the future at the company because you want to promote people that have been super successful in that role. And so thing number one, I would say is, hey, you were hired to be a sales development rep. So really master that craft. I mean, blow people away at the company with how good you are. And then when you've been in the seat for a period of time, start to talk about different opportunities that might exist at the company. But, thing number one, I think, is you've got to really master that role and shine in order to be even considered for something else. And so, maybe take a step back there. But to the second point that you made, I think, if doing sales development is not your thing, and it's something that you really have to struggle with in order to hit your number. And you are more inclined and strong with taking care of people and making sure that they get everything that they need and they remain customers, then that next step could be a customer success role versus a closing role, for example.
It makes total sense. What does it look like? And we're just kind of teeing things up here before we dive into perhaps some tactics of getting that next position and taking that step up, if we want to frame it like that. But what does it look like, to use your words, David, to really blow your boss away as an SDR? What does it look like to really be kind of away and ahead of the pack and to really stand out?
Yeah, I think, the one thing that I wanted to mention is that multitasking, is a productivity killer. And we don't really realize that because there's so many different tools and tactics and different things that we could be doing, that what I see out there a lot is sales development reps shifting from one task to another, and sort of ping-ponging all over their day and really losing any sort of momentum that you would need. And so with anybody out there listening, I would take a step back and really block out time on your calendar for certain things where you shut down everything else and just really focus on, for example, doing the research, and then shut that down and then take that research and really focus on making the calls and trying to contact people over the phone, and then shut that down and really focus on, writing your initial emails in your sequence. You'll be way more productive, and that'll roll up to better results, which you can then show that you're producing. Do that over a long period of time, and then you'll be queued up for a promotion if there's one available. But thing number one, I think, is definitely getting that multitasking under control, because I see it as a major productivity killer out there.
I want to come back to time in a second, but just to double down on this, what makes SDRs stand out versus essentially their competitors, if there's only one A role and they're all going towards it? Is it just number of appointments booked, or should they be almost doing a publicity stunt for themselves and booking that amazing gig, or I guess that amazing phone call for one of the account managers that is unheard of, that is next level, that no one else has been able to touch that account? Should they be focusing on kind of one-off things like this, or is it just about getting the numbers and just being kind of 10% above everyone else?
No, I would, reverse engineer your goal as an SDR and crush it every month. Okay. So because at a higher level in the company, again, the reason that you're hired as an SDR is basically to fill in a number on a spreadsheet of the number of qualified appointments that you've been able to hit that month or that quarter. And they want to see that number is hit religiously month after month for a long period of time, so that they can get the return on the investment that they're making in you as an SDR. And so everything else is noise, really. It's the amount of time that you're spending on various tasks, or helping your colleagues, or organizing the Christmas party, or doing all these other things. Hey, those are great, but at the end of the day, the business is looking for, have you hit your number consistently month after month, and done it in a way without causing issues on the floor or being a jerk or something like that. I mean, that's pretty much all it is. And so really, everybody out there, please, if you're listening, don't come to your manager, after 3 or 4 months where you weren't hitting your number and now you want a promotion. And also, by the way, you were, researching all these great accounts, and you plan the Christmas party, and you help your colleagues and all this stuff. Look, dude, the number has to be hit. That's why you're here. That's why you're in the seat. So it's really, really important that's thing number one.
So I've never done an SDR role. I've done essentially account management. It is pretty much my background in medical devices. Everyone knew the brand, everyone knew the company. And I always found exactly what you're describing there, David, of as long as I hit my numbers, nobody really give a shit about me not turning up for this or this paperwork being late or me not doing my expenses were the worst. I was always 6 months late with the expenses, which caused problems with then accounting. They were chasing me. We had a company car, so it was all the fuel side of things. I just never did because, as I said, I knew damn well my manager would cover my ass as long as I kept hitting that target. How long with that considered, how long does an SDR need to keep their head down and hit these targets, smash these targets? How many months or even years do they need to do that before they should almost feel worthy of start asking about a promotion, start investigating it? Because clearly some of this is mindset. Clearly some of this is your interpretation of how successful you're having yourself, and that confidence will pass across to other people. How long should we be doing all this for, and really crushing it before we start reaching out for that next role?
Yeah, so there's two things. One is if there's any managers or sales development managers listening, or even heads of sales that run sales development teams, it's really the management's job to kind of set up what the career path and the promotion path looks like at the company. I mean, it's really important to say, hey, we want you to be in the chair doing the SDR job for 12 months. You have to hit your targets and you have to play nice with everybody for 12 months. And then we will talk to you about promotion. If you don't have that written out on a spreadsheet and clarified for everyone, you're setting yourself up as the manager for these really awkward conversations where that lower performer comes to you and wants to be promoted. So that should be set up. So now back to the SDR. If that's not set up and that's vague, I would aim for a year. A good 12 months of, you hit your ramp targets and then you hit your targets consistently over the course of 1 year before you even start to broach the topic of promotion. You got to have at least that year under your belt, unless they come to you and they say, hey, you're a superstar and we need somebody in this other department, so can you step up? Hey, great. Okay, then you're all set. But before you start to do it, you got to have that track record. Otherwise, it's just annoying.
That's a succinct way of describing it. Okay, David, clearly, and I want to take this from the manager's perspective first, and then hopefully we can pull some insights from that and reverse engineer it for the SDRs listening. Why would a manager pull someone out of an SDR role when they're crushing it, when they're doing really well, when they're hitting their targets, when perhaps they're on a different pay scale to an account executive? Why would they promote them versus just hiring an AE, an account executive from another organization? Even better if it's a competitor. They've got experience. They might already have that industry knowledge. Why would they want to promote someone rather than just bring someone else in externally?
Well, there's a lot of layers to that question. So, one is if you've got top talent and you have an A player on the team or even like a B plus player, those people are extremely hard to find. And you want to keep them around. And if someone is a highly successful SDR and they've been in the chair for quite a while and they don't see sort of a light at the end of the tunnel at your company, then they will start to look around. They're being probably inundated with requests from recruiters to be pulled off of your company into a company that says, hey, we'll double your salary, we'll get you an AE job, and it'll be cake and ice cream. And they're sitting there going, well, they're not making it clear here at this company, so why don't I just jump ship over to this other company? And so, what a lot of managers do is they feel like, oh, we might lose this person, so let's go ahead and put them into an AE role if there's one available. The other thing is that I mentioned this before, but there's a big pay bump between being an SDR and an AE, and a lot of companies double the salary. So if you see that available, you want to go for it, because especially in the higher rent markets, here in the States, you need that in order to just be able to have a decent lifestyle. So they want to get out of that as soon as possible, get up to that higher pay bracket, so they jump in there. But from a business perspective, no companies do this, but it kind of makes me think that you're doubling the pay for a closing rep, because it's easy to line up closed revenue to the cost of that individual. It's much harder to line up closed revenue to the cost of a sales development rep. But the thing is, which really to the business is more valuable? Someone who consistently kicks out high quality appointments leading to pipeline, or someone who closes deals? There's some people out there that are writing that maybe SDRs should be paid a lot more for the value that they bring, even though it's harder to connect directly to closed won revenue.
That might be a conversation for, and this is a scoop for everyone listening, we're starting an additional podcast for sales leaders. It's going to be hosted over at salesleadership.org. So that's perhaps a conversation to have there. But it seems like from the SDR perspective, it's all looping back to the same thing here of people will promote you, the management will push you, the opportunities will arise if you're crushing it, because they don't want to let you go. And you mentioned something here which I hadn't planned on talking about, but I think it's an interesting thing to touch on. I guess there's three options here. There is promotion internally with the company you've got. There is if you're getting bombarded by recruiters to jump down that alleyway and see where that path might take you. And I feel like there's a third option here for someone who is prospecting, someone who is good at getting in front of people, getting on the phone, booking appointments, that you could prospect your own sales job in a company that you'd really like to be a part of and be involved in the culture, and you choose a specific company to go at as opposed to go where there's a job available. So out of those three options, David, is there a better option? Is there a worse option? Is there a more efficient way to jump from SDR to AE between kind of internal promotions, recruiters, and then just hunting out hiring managers for organizations that you want to work for?
I would say that probably the simplest path and the quickest path is to take one of the recruiter calls and go in and try to convince them to hire you as an AE. They don't know who you are. They don't know what you can do. If you can go in and do a great sales job in the interview process and land yourself an AE job, then boom, you're done. You got the job.
Sure.
You just bypassed all the political back office conversations and everything that goes along with staying at your company. Now the only thing is, the old adage is that the grass is always greener, in somebody else's backyard. That's fraught with risk, because you might get into the company and the company sucks. They don't have any marketing. There is no SDRs. The product doesn't work. The people stink. And so now you're screwed, because you just went from a company that you liked but wasn't promoting you fast enough to this toxic situation. So you got to be really careful about that. I mean, looking back on my own career, I would really try to take a long view and look at if you're an SDR, you're doing really, really well. You want to become an AE, or you at least want a promotion into a different part of the organization, but nobody's getting back to you. They're telling you to wait. They're just saying, go back and hit your number and we'll talk to you later. I would take a step back, take the long view, look at the industry that you're in. Does it have a big future? Look at the product. Do you have a lot of good reviews of the product? Do people like the product? Look at maybe the investors that are in your company. Are they top flight investors, and do they have a track record of success? And then look at your leadership team. I mean, are you inspired by your leadership team? Do you really do they reach out to you and connect, or are they, a bunch of aloof people who never talk to you? I mean, take all those factors in and maybe take a step back and go, hey, you know what? I'm going to give this 6 more months, and I'm going to crush it every month, and I'm going to stick around and see what happens, because you never know. You could walk in the next day and you have a new manager who really wants to work with you. You got a whole new executive team. They release a product that's awesome, and now all of a sudden, you've got tenure and you're doing great at the company, instead of jumping to something you have no idea of what it might be like. So
I guess that might become a competitive advantage in itself. And you can tell us the figures of this if you know them off the top of your head, but I'm not sure how long people stay in SDR roles. I know for more traditional sales roles, it used to be kind of 4 years. Now it's down to 18 months, 2 years tops that people stay in the roles. So if you've been crushing your numbers for 2 years straight as an SDR, you're going to be top of the list when everyone else has been doing it for 6 months, a year, right? You're going to be the first choice purely because you've been there longer, which is that's the simplest skill to pick up, right? Just put your head down and don't complain for that little bit longer than anyone else.
yeah, definitely. I mean, again, if believe me, if you have been crushing it as an SDR month after month, you're just like clockwork. You got to take a step back and understand your value to the company. I mean, pipeline is like oxygen for a sales team, and you've proved for a long period of time that you can produce pipeline. So you have a lot of chips. I mean, you have a lot of bargaining potential with the company to say, I can continue this for a long period of time. Or if you do put me in another role, I will crush that role as well, just like I've done here. So you're in a great position.
Okay, David, if we are getting called by recruiters, it seems like for an AE in the kind of world that I've had in medical device sales, the one thing they want to know is whether you were over or under target for the kind of 5 years and the foreseeable past, or where you're going to be for this year and the foreseeable future as well. What does an AE need to provide data-wise to show that they are crushing it? And there's kind of a couple of extra questions I'll tag on the back of this in a second, but we'll start with that of what paperwork do we need to have if we can get it that shows that we are doing well and we should be in the conversation with a recruiter when they're setting recruiting for a new position.
Yeah, I mean, they go as far here to with AEs. You're asking about AEs, right, as opposed to SDRs.
Well, we can touch on both, but yeah, SDRs is what I'm focused on here.
Yeah.
What do other than
SDRs,
than just saying the flippant words of, well, I've kind of always hit my targets. What do they need to bring to a recruiter to make that recruiter's eyes light up? Because that's the thing that we're looking for. We want them on our side, right?
Yeah. Okay. So I would say, you don't need a ton of evidence. I mean, if you have like 3 or 4 pieces of evidence, that's usually enough to have them change the subject, at least what I've seen. So what I would look at is if there's any sort of award that's granted for SDRs, like if they do a President's Club or a certification for hitting your number, you definitely want to be able to point those out and emphasize those. And even if there wasn't an award, the next level that I would look at is, do you have any stats, verifiable stats that you can bring to the conversation that demonstrate that you've been able to hit your number? Those should roll off your tongue very easily when you're in an interview. So that there's no doubt that there's any authenticity issues in what you're saying. So I would know your numbers inside and out and be able to demonstrate those. And then definitely, if you have any awards or any hardware that you can bring, that's always helpful as well.
It seems like the perfect thing to do, but I don't know the legality of it would be to collect some kind of data on all the people you're reaching out to, the people you've had success to, and then go to your company's competitors. Clearly, there's ethical reasons why this doesn't work as well, and you can't just rip a CRM system apart and drag that one place to the other. But I know the biggest pay bump I ever got was going from one medical device company to the competitor, and I purely moved because I wanted to move further up to the north to be closer to my family here in the UK, and there was no jobs for the original company up here, so I shifted from one side to the other, and just the inadvertent intellectual property I had in my head, recruiters lit up as soon as they heard this. And they basically found this job before it was available and set me up for it. So again, perhaps there's a disparity between an AE and kind of the account management role that an SDR and the account management role that I was in from a pay scale. And clearly this all, for a recruiter perspective, they're getting a percentage or they're getting a placement fee. So that's all they're really interested in with all of this. But that might be something to think about as well. If you are looking for a shift in roles, perhaps a competitor would welcome you with open arms if you've got good connections, good contacts with people in the industry. So kind of final thing. Oh, God, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to put a point on that. I mean, if you look at the role of an SDR from a high level, it's putting numbers in a spreadsheet of the number of appointments that you made and the pipeline and how that pipeline converts to closed won business. The further up you go in the food chain, the more that the business talks about is just numbers in a spreadsheet. And just the fact of the matter is, in 2018 and moving forward, that we live in a freelance economy. I mean, that one day somebody could look at the numbers and go, you know what, we don't need an SDR team anymore. Boom, gone. Okay. There's all sorts of changes that could happen at any time. And ultimately, it's a freelance economy, and you need to take care of yourself as your own brand and your own incorporated unit. And if you love the company, love what you're doing, love the product, and you're making good money, stick with it. But if at any time anything could change, so work on yourself and leave yourself lots of options, because you might need them one day. And never be rude to recruiters, like no matter what.
You know what? I'm glad you said that, and we'll dive into that a little bit further, because I was second guessing myself as I was saying, or alluding to looking after yourself first, and you were slightly more blunt about it. Is that something that we should be focused on for the SDRs listening, AEs, everyone else listening? And what steps should we be taking to set ourselves up to be more anti-fragile or more robust in kind of a very fast-moving sales industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still remnants of the old way of thinking where, you go to school. The school system's still set up to create, automatrons who will go and work in factories, and they haven't really changed much. And so you go through the school system, 20 years of the school system, and then there's still this mythology that you go in and you work your job, and you do a good job, and you'll be happy, and it's just that's completely blown up. I mean, it's the same level as like the tooth fairy or other things. I mean, it's just gone. I mean, if you think that that's the way the world works. And I think it's hilarious when, every week people post on LinkedIn how they start at this new company and they get a Mac and they get a T-shirt and a water bottle. And, for the next couple of years, they're posting all this great stuff and then they're gone, and it's like, come on. I mean, the loyalty, the ultimate loyalty is how much value are you creating in the market yourself, and how portable is that? Because it's almost like the analogy of a ship out in the sea. I mean, you're not part of like a institution anymore. You're really on your own, and you have to build your skills and build your value in the marketplace so that you're unsinkable. And I think a lot of people they get bought into organizations, and it's like that could disappear at any moment. And you got to realize that your role could disappear. So you got to be ready for anything.
We'll come back onto skills in a second, and we'll wrap up the show with that, because I want to dive into what skills we should be focusing on, trying to learn before we take that leap, so that it's a smooth transition and we jump straight in and we're crushing it. But I want to pick your brains on what you just said there, David, of SDRs. It's a somewhat new role to sales. It's the predictable sales kind of revenue model that people are piggybacking to split up the sales role into these different segments. For someone who's an SDR, should they be pushing themselves to get into an AE role because SDR roles are going to change, become non-existent, develop into something else in the next kind of 3 to 5 years? Should that be something at the back of, even if it's just at the back of their mind, that AI, Google Duplex, which is making calls and booking appointments and sounding, hilariously close to being an actual human. Should SDRs have all this at the back of their head when they are kind of in the role plodding along? Should there be a real impetus and a real push for them to get that account manager position, because the job just might not exist in 5 years, even if the company does?
Yeah, I mean, I think that everyone should look at it this way. And this is what I tell them. My sons are 5 and 8. And what I tell them is there's basically going to be two jobs in the future. One is the robots telling you what to do, and one is you telling the robots what to do. And so no matter what role you're in or whatever position you're in, you basically, you have those two choices in your future. And for me personally, I'd rather tell the robots what to do. And so, and taking it back to sales development, companies are going to need to build relationships with people and open new doors and build new pipelines so that they can have a predictable revenue stream. I mean, I don't see that changing anytime in the near future until I can say to Alexa, book me an appointment with the VP of sales at IBM. We're not quite there yet. So I think that we still have a lot of runway in the sales profession, but I would think of it that how can you learn about all these new tools that are out there, become familiar with them, leverage them as your competitive advantage, and not get swept up in all the distractions and the complexity that's out there right now. Going back to that point of time management and things like that we were talking about before.
And again, final thing before we get on skills, what standout tools or industry standard tools should SDRs know about, even if they're not using perhaps because of the company hasn't paid for it? But what tools should they know about? And then as an AE, what tools should we know about so that you can talk confidently about them, perhaps in an interview process?
Yeah, I mean, so I would say that there's kind of a breakaway point in the market right now between the cadence tools and the sequence tools. I think it's really important, whatever part of the organization that you're going into, that you have some mastery over SalesLoft and or outreach, and beyond just the basic functionality, but you can go in and set things up in a customized way and be able to go in and pull basic data reports and have some familiarity. Both of those companies are going to be more and more used throughout the organization in sales, customer success, even marketing. And having a familiarity with those, how they work and how they integrate is super important right now. And it's in most, at least technology SaaS companies that have SDRs, they've got one or the other of those. So it's right there. I mean, take a little bit of time and really learn how to use it and how to queue it up, because you'll probably be using it for the next few years.
It's funny you mentioned those two. I've got Manny, who's I think he's CEO of Outreach. He's coming on the show, and we've got a phone call with him about a few things. But am I right in thinking they're the two with the most funding, kind of the most rapid growth out of that kind of segment of the industry?
Yeah, they're breaking away big time. There's definitely competitors in that space, and everybody's got their own take on it. But they're breaking away at this point. They've got a lot of funding. They've got top talent. They're run by incredibly smart, hardworking people. So they're going to be around for a while.
Cool.
Maybe not in their current iteration, but they're going to be around for a while.
Perfect. Good stuff. Okay, well, David, I've got one final thing I want to ask you about, and that is the skills that we need to be developing right now so that when we hopefully get this AE role, we can just jump straight in and we can start crushing it immediately. I want to ask you kind of two ways of what are the obvious kind of one or two or three skills that we need to learn, and then what are the unobvious ones? What are the ones that we go kind of 6 months down the line, a year down the line? Oh, I wish I would have picked that up beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious ones are being able to do your own prospecting. You'll never starve. And so I always tell SDRs, this is some of the most valuable 1 or 2 years that you'll spend in your whole career, because no matter what you end up doing, if you can build your own pipeline, you're kind of bulletproof in a lot of ways. You can always rely on yourself. You don't have to worry about what the marketing department's doing, or even if you have an SDR when you become a sales rep, because you know that you can do it yourself. Where I see people get in trouble is, they get promoted to an AE and they go, oh my God, I just was prospecting for 2 years. That's all I did. I never want to, make another call again or send another email. I hate it. And then they sit there and go, God, I don't have any appointments. I'm not getting any leads for marketing, and my SDRs suck. And it's like, bro, you got to keep prospecting your whole life if you're going to be in sales. I mean, for the love of God, like, we didn't even have SDRs back in my day. I'm 100 years old, so I didn't have any SDRs. You had to do everything yourself. So learn how to fill your own funnel while you are focused on filling up, the company's funnel as an SDR. Learn that down. The other thing, I mean, and I talked about this before, I'm just big on this right now. I think that with the development of all this technology, all these tools, all these helpful hints, going on social media, I think right now what can really break people away is taking a little time out of this whole technology screen, craziness that we have. And, every once in a while, just kind of going out into nature, really, with your notebook and a pen and a paper, and just kind of think about, okay, what's working right now with me? What do I like? What do I not like? What can I do better, moving forward? And just kind of write that out in the old school way and come back refreshed. Because I think if you're spending too much time in technology, reacting and ping-ponging back between things and multitasking, that it's affecting people's productivity, and you need a little break from it. So I would just encourage everybody, let things kind of soak in a little bit, get away from it, and come back, and you'll be much more prioritized and ready to focus and be much more productive.
I love it. It's funny you should say that. I've just come back from a trip to Ireland. I've got a bunch of family over there, so every couple of years we go on a big road trip, drink too much Guinness and then a load of Irish whiskey. We went on a couple of Guinness tours and a couple of Irish whiskey distillery tours as well. It was a great holiday. The point of me saying this is I came back with, as you described, a full moleskin notebook of ideas and new content ideas, new ways to promote. And then importantly, I just dumped a whole ton of video content that we were planning out as well. We didn't start the process of recording it, but I probably would have still dumped it anyway, because as you've got all these different things going on, as people are calling you, you got your emails, I'm recording these shows, I'm still selling the ad space. We've got a brand now who wants to sponsor the show for 3 years moving forward. They've upped kind of the offer they've put to us from 2 years to 3. So all this going on, it's very easy to just go, I'll do everything. I'll call this person, I'll email this person. As an SDR, perhaps you're sending postcards out, you're doing this and this. And I think it's really important to just spend that little bit of time every now and again, maybe once a quarter, just to refocus and reassess, because I get sucked up in all of this. I'm sure the audience do as well. And with that, David, I want you to tell us 2 things. 1, 10bound, what you do there. And then 2, this is kind of ties into a bigger question that perhaps you can just round off slightly, and we'll finish the show with that. So tell us a little bit about 10bound, and we tell us a little bit then about the conference that you've got coming up. I've got down here the 30th of August. And the reason I ask about both of them is I want you to tell us if there's any resources alongside the conference, or if there's any other places we should be going, SDRs should be going specifically to round off their skills as kind of along the lines of the content that you put together and the consulting and the training that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. We've been building up a kind of a 10bound alumni for the last year and a half, basically helping people who were SDRs and then they were promoted to managers to really understand what it takes to manage an SDR team, a high performance SDR team, because there's just not a lot of information out there on how to do that. And so within the management classes, what we notice is people needed something to kind of add on to that to keep it going. So we developed a coaching program that can just take place over the phone or on Zoom calls, where we meet up with the new managers once a week or once every couple of weeks and go through, the challenges that they're having in managing a team. So right now, the working title is just the 10-bound coaching program, and we probably need a better one. But we're really excited with the early results that we're getting, and the new managers really seem to like it. The other quick thing, as you mentioned, on August 30th, we've got the Sales Development Conference, which it's the second annual conference 100% focused on sales development. And this year, we've got a leadership track where we'll be going into strategy and more of the high level aspects of running a sales development program. And then we also have a rep track. So if a manager wants to bring their whole team, we've got some of the top trainers around the country coming in to do hands-on training on, cold calling, emailing, mindset for success and things like that. So we're really excited. That's August 30th in San Francisco, and it's the Sales Development Conference.
Perfect. I will link to both of those in the show notes of this episode over at salesman.org. And just a final one, because I don't feel like I give the audience, the SDRs in the audience, enough love. Are there any books you'd recommend? Is there any other resources or any other blogs that you'd recommend for the lovely SDRs listening right now?
Yeah, I mean, table stakes are the Sales Development Playbook by Trish Bertuzzi and Sales Development by Corey Bray. If you haven't read those are just, that's like number one. You got to read those. Those are Sales Development 101, and they're a great foundation. The other one that you might want to check out that's a little bit outside of just the narrow focus of sales development is called The Morning Miracle by Hal Elrod. And, when you think about all those distractions and multitasking that we were talking about, he really gives you a strategy for how to maximize your time in the morning to kind of quiet things down, prioritize, make sure you're ready for the day, and you can go in and crush it and absolutely, blow your competitors out of the water and impress your boss and potentially get a raise. So, or a promotion. So I would definitely check out Morning Miracle. It's made a huge impact on my life personally.
Perfect. We've interviewed Hal kind of 3, maybe even 4 years ago now, whenever we first started the show. So I'll link to that show. It was probably terrible. There's no video for it, but I'll link to the audio in this show notes as well, so anyone can check that out. We'll link to all the books you just mentioned, and I appreciate you kind of plug in Trish and other people's books there as well, David. And with that, mate, I want to thank you for your time, as always, and for joining us on the Salesman Podcast.
Thank you so much. We'll see you again soon.